Okay, back for part 2. Hopefully you had a go at that first challenge and you're starting to wrap your head around the concept of classes. Now this time we're going to bring together the two things that we've learnt so far today, the structural HTML and the classes, and we're going to just build a simple structure for a website. So here's an example of how we can create classes that are reusable throughout our whole site. So for example, when I'm coding, I always create some background classes in my CSS that whenever I want to add a background to a section or an element, I can just add that class and it automatically changes the background color. So here, for example, in my HTML, I've created 4 sections. I want the first section to have a light gray background, the second section to have a dark background, the third section to have no background, so just white, and the final section to have a dark grey background. So I've applied my universal styles first. I've targeted every section and given it 5% padding because I don't want to write that out every single time. So all of my sections have 5% padding. And then I've created a class for each background. So my light background, I've created a class BG Light, given it a background color of light gray. And then for my dark background, I've created a class BG Dark. So as I said before, you can make your classes whatever you want them to be called. But the more logical and understandable you can make them, the easier it'll be when you come back to your coding and you've forgotten why you've done what you've done. When I see, as I'm reading through my code, section class BG Dark, I know exactly what that CSS is going to do. It's like jogging my memory of what I've written before. So whenever we're writing our CSS classes, I try to be as reusable and logical as possible. Okay, this time we're going to do a big activity. So I'm going to create 2 sections, a light section and a dark section, each with a button. So we'll refresh some styles, and I'm going to teach you a couple of new things in CSS for styling buttons based on some of the questions that we had in the Facebook community. And then you guys will have a go at building this together. So let's jump over. Typically when I'm coding, I will start with my HTML first. So let's have a look again. I've got 2 sections. Inside each section, I'm going to call this a H2. I'm going to assume I've already got a H1 somewhere on my page that's defining the whole page. So I've got 2 H2s, a paragraph, and a link. So I'll jump over to my HTML, move this down just to give myself a little bit more space, and I'll create section. You can see it automatically indents for you in CodePen as soon as you start to nest something inside. So I've got a H2 light, and then a paragraph. And then I will close that section. Now I'm going to copy and paste, but I actually highly recommend that you try not to copy and paste too much, because the muscle memory that you build when you're actually typing out the HTML syntax helps you to learn. So I've got 2 sections, light and dark. Now, first I want to start with my styles that are applying to everything. So in my example, I was using a custom font. So if I jump back to, let's see if I can do it straight through here actually. I'll go to settings. No. Sometimes it will pre-find CSS resources for you. So I thought maybe the Google fonts were already there. So let's jump back to another tab. Type in my Google fonts. And then pick a font. I think I was using Quicksand. Now we click plus. We come down here. It was a little bit cut off the screen there, sorry. And we copy this into the settings. So we jump back over, settings. Now, I went to the CSS, but it gave us the whole code that it said to add to the head. So we'll add it over here. So we've added that to the head, then we need to style it in the CSS. So we come back to our CSS. We'll do our CSS reset. Does anyone else just bundle their typing when someone's watching? So we've done our CSS reset, and then we want to set the font for everything. So we'll put it on the body because it's for the whole page, and we set font, family, quicksand. See if I've spelled that right. Beautiful. Okay, so now we can work through styling one part at a time. So I'll move this over. We can hide our HTML for now, just to give us some more space. So the first thing I'm going to do is give some space around each of my sections. So we'll target section, padding 5%. Beautiful. So I've got space around each element. Now, thinking back to the design, I realized that I have forgotten my links. So let's jump back over here and add them. So I've got ahref equals, I'm just going to put a hash. Hash is my placeholder. So when I'm writing a link and I don't know what I want it to link to yet, maybe it's just a draft for now, or I need to go find the link and copy and paste it, I just use a hash as a placeholder to remind myself. So click me. Sometimes you'll notice as you start coding, it breaks everything, because before I had typed this, it's including everything below here as part of the link. So it's making this whole next section part of the link. Okay, and then I'm going to give this a class of button, because we want to style those links specifically to look like a button, and if we add a link later inside our paragraph, we don't want those same styles to apply. Cool. All right. What should we style next? Let's do our backgrounds. So we do .bg-light, and we go background, color. Now you could copy the hex code for this, or you could do an RGB value. I like RGB for scales of gray, because if you use really high numbers, it's closer to white. If you use really low numbers, it's closer to black. So I know just off the top of my head that doing 250, 250, 250 is pretty close to like a really light gray. Then we'll do another one for .bg dark, and we'll give it a dark background. So this one might be 60, 60, 60. Okay, so we've added those to our CSS, but we need to tell them where to apply in our HTML. So this first section, we want to give a class of bg-light. See if it works. You can see the subtle background color there. I can make it a bit darker so it's obvious. Cool, so we've got our background color there. And then in our dark section, class equals bg-dark. Beautiful. Now we also want to give a default color to our BG dark section so that we can read it. Cool, progress. Okay, now we might want to do some default typography styles. So for me, this is all a little bit squished together. So I'm going to target my H2 and my P and give them some margin bottom. There we go, that breaks that up a little bit. Then we'll style our button. So we use .button because we're selecting everything with a class of button. Now, first things first, let's get rid of that ugly blue color. Normally when we've set color, we've given it a specific color, but there's another property called color inherit, which means inherit the color from its parent. And then we can just set the color once, and both of them will inherit the color of its parent container. So this one will be dark and this one will be light. Cool. Now we can get rid of the underline by setting text decoration to none. We want to give it a border, and let's say maybe 2 pixels, solid. If we don't tell it a value, if we don't tell it a color in the border, it again will interpret that color from the overall color. So 2 pixel solid. We want some padding. Let's give it 1 rem. Now, this is something you guys asked about in the Facebook group. See how as this gets bigger, it starts to overlap the element above it. Now, links in particular behave a bit quirky when it comes to vertical padding and margin. And that's because they're an inline element. And I could do a whole 1-hour lesson on inline elements, but what you need to know is that to fix that and to just get them to behave how you expect them to behave, we use the property display inline block. And that helps them to just behave exactly as you would expect, that they sit down below the element above and they create space for themselves. Now, another little trick that you might have seen in the wild web of coding, is to have 2 values listed here. So when you have 1 value listed for padding, it puts that value evenly on every side. If you wanted to have different values left and right and top and bottom, the way we've taught you so far is to say padding left, 2 rem. Padding right, 2 rem. Now, you can totally do that. That's a fine way of doing it. It's technically completely correct, but there's a shorthand that lets you apply different values for top and bottom in the one. So if I say 1 rem space 2 rem, let's see what that does. The first value is the vertical, so top and bottom. The second value is the left and right. So that's just a shorthand way of creating different padding on each side. Now, a bonus one, if you've made it this far into the lesson, what if we make these do something when we hover over them? This is a new CSS selector. So we do dot button semicolon hover. And what that's saying is when you hover over any element that has a class of button, apply these styles. And we say, for example, color orange. Let's see what that does. Ooh, pretty cool. Technically, you can apply a hover to anything. So I could have said here, H2 hover. Don't do that, because all you'll do is frustrate your users, because we expect, in terms of user experience, that anything we hover over is clickable. So you can use this for everything, but you should only use it for links. Cool, huh? And that's it. So give this a go, guys. This is going to be the foundational HTML and CSS skills so far to build the first basic website that we're going to build this week. And it's pretty cool to think that when you first started this challenge just a couple of days ago, you didn't know any of this. And now you're already building beautiful little, splash pages. So good luck. Let me know how you go. Jump on the Facebook group and share your progress, and we'll go from there.